Hello, it's Kendall from the future. To let you guys know that in, classic Spilled fashion, we had a tech difficulty. So the beginning of this episode, I was actually recording through my MacBook mic instead of our actual fancy mics. So you'll hear that it's like not the best quality, but it's only a couple minutes. So we didn't want to re-record it because honestly, we thought we were really funny. So hang in there. If this is your first impression of us, hopefully you can tell right now that the mic quality is better. So yeah, give us a couple seconds and we'll be back to our regular quality very shortly. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, bonjour, hello everyone, and welcome back to Spilled. We're just trying something new. Episode 9, let's shake it up a little bit. We're so excited to be spilling history's hottest gossip with you. I was gonna say guys, but like ladies, gays, everyone is welcome.
Ladies.
I'm going real off track. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for the engagement on our last episode all about witches. We have another spooky episode for you today. And as a reminder, we're publishing every other Tuesday. So make sure you're following along so you get the notifications when we post. Oh my God. And I totally forgot to introduce ourselves. If you're new here, we're your hosts, Kendall
And Delaney.
And usually my introductions are a little bit more organized. But Saturday night, let's get a little crazy with it. Delaney, do you know what you're going to be for Halloween yet?
I don't, and I'm kind of panicking because it's October 18th. I haven't ordered anything. Like, my roommates and I have briefly discussed, and I won't let our secrets out because obviously it has to be like a big surprise. But worst comes to worst, I'm probably just going to repeat my costumes from last year.
Sustainable queen. That's
right,
so fair.
Right. Like, yeah. But honestly, I would like to be a pirate, but like Jack Sparrow,
Oh,
yeah,
you should be Grace O'Malley.
I should be Grace O'Malley. I was thinking something like historical, like a hot history baddie.
I feel like you could get like a really sick black corset type, like, but then with like the puffy kind of sleeves coming out of it, and then like a really cool skirt, because that's like what she's often depicted in.
Wig.
Episode 2, the Dark Lady of the Duna. If you guys are super lost right now.
Kendall, what are you gonna be? I'm really curious about this. You always have some good costumes up your sleeve.
Yeah, I started the month with like no plans, and then now I have like 4 different events that I need an outfit for. So one of them is a wig party, which I don't really know how I feel about wig parties, to be honest. Like, I'm so sorry for those of you who love them, but the idea of like putting on a wig and like going out to bars and stuff, it just feels so like bachelorette party to me. So I'm gonna play ball, but I figured I'd incorporate the wig into other costumes. So I got basically this like black fuck ass bob with bangs. And I think I can just wear it in a lot of ways because it's very much like a statement thing. So for the wig party, that, and then I think maybe Edna mode, perhaps a bit more of a sexy Edna mode.
With the wig.
With the wig, exactly. And then I have this like black lace veil. Oh, voice crack. I have this black lace veil and like black lace dress thing, and I kind of want to do like a really vampy like red lip. So might have some sort of like, not like corpse bride, but I don't know. I don't really know what I'm going to call it, but it'll look costumey. So got a few things on the docket, but worst case, risky business, bob, white button up, black cigarette pants, pumps, very easy.
Kendall, I feel like somehow that really, really ties in to what we are talking about today. I think we should finally let the crowd know. Guys, we are jumping into, or should I say, hopping into.
That's a good one.
Right? Look at me go. The history of the jiāngshī, the hopping vampires. Let that sink in. Have you heard of it? Do you know who they are? I have never
heard of these, so I'm very excited to learn.
No, guys, and let us tell you, this is not your Damon Stefan Salvatore. This is not your Edward Cullen, okay? This is definitely not your Michael B. Jordan. This is a very original take on the whole narrative around vampires. And we're going to be going to China today, guys. We're going far. We're not staying in the West, okay? We're not in Europe. We're not in the places where I'm pretty sure you've heard vampires lurking and stalking around. we're in a new location, and let's just dive into it.
I mean, I don't know what could be better than Michael B. Jordan, but I'm willing to let you prove me wrong. So you mentioned we're not in the West. Where are we? Can you give us a little bit of context on what is going on in the world, time period, etc.? Contextualize it for us.
You know we love our context. All right. We are going to be looking, dynasty-wise, we're in China, and we're looking into the Qing dynasty. So for the people out there that love their dates, that's 1644 to 1912. Okay, guys, so 1640s, European colonialism, to 1912, the sinking of the Titanic, for just a little reference point for y'all. Very long time period, okay? I said that we're in China, but as we know, China's extremely large. And so specifically today, we're looking into like southern, central China, especially and more like specifically jiāngshī. Again, it's in like southern, central China.
Also, guys, Delaney's going to try her very best on these pronunciations today. If you're a devout follower of the pod, you know she can barely pronounce some of these English words. So
okay,
she has a whole list of pronunciations in front of her. If you know how to pronounce these words better, we're super open to the feedback. Please know our intentions are in the right place here. And hopefully we don't say anything wrong in a way that like means something totally different and offensive.
Yes, thank you, Kendall, for that, because as you guys know, it's always my fear to pronounce anything wrong and take away any cultural significance or importance. But not only are we going to be in China, we're also at some points going to span to like Vietnam, Korea, Japan. So we're hopping, quite literally. We're hopping a little bit as they did. And don't get confused because we'll explain it. And again, if the whole like kind of dates 1640s to 1912 didn't quite grasp with you, if you listened to our last episode, we're at the tail end of the Little Ice Age at this point in time, okay? We're also like in Enlightenment ideals are circulating in Europe, going back to our Ben Franklin era. That's around 1700s, but give y'all some reference points if you are used to hearing about the West or you only have historical knowledge of the West. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more context into the world we're going to be diving into today.
And if you guys didn't have reason enough to follow the podcast, we are releasing a bonus episode. We're not going to tell you when. So make sure you're following our Instagram, follow our TikTok, both at Spilled History, and follow the podcast because at some point this October, you guys are getting a bonus episode. We've heard your cries for weekly episodes. Guess what? Ain't happening. We're way too busy. This takes way too long for us employed gals to be doing weekly. But we wanted to make October really spooky and special for you guys, so you will be getting a bonus episode. We're just not telling you when.
Like she said, y'all better tune in. Y'all better turn on them notifications because otherwise you're going to miss one of the hottest episodes, in my opinion, of our October series. So to get back on track, Kendall, when I say hopping vampires, I just want to know what comes to your mind, like from somebody who knows what they are really. Like I want to know, like if I'm like hopping vampires, like walk me through your thought process.
The only visual that's coming to mind, and I like literally don't even know where this visual is from, but do you know that picture? Maybe it's like an emoji. I don't even know. And it's like a man and he's kind of wearing like a top hat and he's wearing a suit and it's kind of like a triangle and then his legs go into like a very little
Michael
base.
Jackson.
And then yes, you're
Michael
right.
Jackson.
Yes, but then it's like there's like a little black thing under it because it's like the shadow and it makes
Michael Jackson.
Like, okay, so that's literally what I'm thinking of.
Ashimona.
That's what I'm thinking of, but then like bloody.
Okay, I don't know if this is just like a side of TikTok that I'm on, but I don't know if you've seen like the whole like Fortnite map and it's like a horror
Definitely
map
not.
and it's Michael Jackson. Okay. Kendall, you know the Granny
too
game?
hot for that.
You know like you know Granny? Like the whole like Granny and you have to like hide from her and if she sees you, like you're dead. It's that, but it's Michael Jackson.
Wait, I don't even know what that is.
It's like
Age
a horror
gap.
game. It's literally a horror game. And all I'm thinking of, guys, if you haven't seen this, like just look up like Michael Jackson horror map Fortnite or whatever. Oh gosh, wow, we really got off track.
Well, Delaney, thanks so much for taking some time to make our Gen Z crowd feel seen. In other news, the Victoria's Secret fashion show's back, the side part's back, and I tried on skinny jeans today. So now that the millennials are happy, let's dive in.
Our skinny jean queens. We love ya. Okay, so I've mentioned the name jiāngshī. Again, hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. There's a lot of different variations of how to pronounce that. And essentially, what that translates to is a stiff corpse. So kind of hence the hopping. And similar to a Western vampire, they avoid daylight, they drain a life force, but it goes a lot deeper. And I love the fact that this is so different than the idea of the Western vampire that we've seen in media, like the idea of the vampire that has been pushed out through movies, through books, through everything for centuries, quite literally. Okay, so you guys have heard me mention the name jiāngshī. It quite literally translates to stiff corpse. But before we can dive into all the juicy details of the episode, we got to set some basis so you guys kind of understand a lot of the very important elements towards their origin. So many of these said components originate in ancient Chinese culture. And one of the aspects of this is Taoism, spelled T-A-O, Taoism. So can kind of be pronounced either way from what I've been researching, but we're going to go with Taoism for today's episode. And Taoism is an ancient Chinese religious philosophy, and it has a lot of roots in a lot of the aspects that we're going to be talking about in this episode. If you guys want further clarification, feel free to leave us some comments down below. We can do a separate episodes on it, go even deeper, because it's a really, really interesting topic I'd love to get into. So for starters, I feel like most of our listeners have probably heard of the whole concept of yin and yang, and maybe seen the image before, the black and the white, having a piece of jewelry of it or something. And the yang, which is the hun, essentially rises to heaven in death. So again, a lot of these aspects we're talking, this is post-mortem or during passing, and this is kind of the good benevolent spirit. It has good intentions, protecting, guiding others. And then the po, the yin, stays with the body, and it kind of begins to dissipate as the corpse decays. So right when they pass, the yang, the hun, goes up to heaven. The po, yin, stays with the body in that burial process until the corpse completely decays. And if any of this is spooking y'all or scaring you, the whole idea of a corpse, I hate to break it to ya, we're going to be talking about a lot of dead things in this episode, hence the whole idea of vampires. So if that spooks ya, welcome to Halloween Town, baby. Now, where the whole kind of idea of the jiāngshī comes in is that both of these can linger in the body after death. So if the hun, the yang, stays with the body after death, it's called the gu hun. And essentially, this is a lingering hun, meaning that portion of the soul has unfinished business or a concern for their loved ones, a unfair or like an untimely death. And it's kind of what we think of when we think of like an angry spirit, like a ghost or something.
It really does sound like the definition of ghosts. I've done, by the way, and I've done a lot of ghost tours, and that's kind of like how they describe them, is most of it's like unfinished business or something to do with their death. Did Chinese culture have ghosts as well?
They did, from my records, and they have a lot of different kinds, and that would have to be a whole separate episode. But they did have the ye gui, which essentially were wandering ghosts from like a neglected grave, a disturbed grave, or no burial. So there was an aspect where this whole idea of the gu hun played into that whole idea of like a ghost and a wandering spirit.
Okay. So basically, like from the point of your spirit being disturbed, you kind of could go in many different directions in like what became of you.
Now, yes, and that's in reference to, again, the hun or the yang. Now, if the po, the yin, fails to leave the body, again, this is the portion that dissipates as the corpse decays. If that doesn't leave the body at that point in time, that's when we get the jiāngshī.
Oh.
So there's kind of two types of jiāngshī that we have described in our texts. And we have the ones that are like newly dead, so they've very recently passed, and they suddenly like rise up and they attack. So that's one portion. And that second form is a long entombed corpse. So this is one that is like placed or buried in a tomb, enclosed, shut away in some sort of tomb. And because of this, the corpse transforms into a sort of form of a demon and wanders in the night. So those are kind of our two different types of jiāngshī that we see.
Was the type of burial related to like social class or wealth or anything like that in China? Like, are these vampires going to be different social statuses because of how they were buried?
Somewhat so, yeah. And that kind of leads us into the whole idea of like why they're hopping vampires. And there's kind of two reasons for that whole name. And the first one is that, so in Chinese culture at this point in time, being buried like away from somebody's home was very, very inauspicious. So families essentially wanted the proximity, like they wanted that body to be close with them. They wanted a home burial. So they were able to perform their offerings, burning money, food, drink, and kind of maintain their ancestral ties. So again, the ties to their land, to their home, to their family. And so if a burial happened away from the family, away from their home, that is when families would typically hire corpse drivers. And again, this is where we see a lot of the Taoist philosophies come into play. And they would hire these corpse drivers. And so kind of in reference to your question, Kendall, if a family was, not to say impoverished, but they needed to work to live, which most, if not all, did at this point in time. But if they were in that sort of social class, then their family members would have to often travel very far or to different places to do this work, whether it was going up into the mountains or crossing a sea or something just very far in order to gain this type of productive work. And again, that means that if they're working in a cave in the mountain, fatality rate is pretty high. And if they were to pass away, again, if they were buried away from the family's home, that's when they would begin to get worried about the preservation of their soul and what is going to happen post-mortem. So they would hire these corpse drivers to bring the bodies home. So again, that would also go into their social class. Clearly, if they had enough money to pay a corpse driver. Now, this was very important. This wasn't like, I guess we have the money for it. Like, this would be something that was very, very important to the family, and something that they would definitely put money into.
This also might seem so dumb, but we should note that these are not cars they're driving.
No.
They are putting these corpses on what presumably like horse wagon situation.
Well, actually, some of the whole like background behind people like witnessing the jiāngshī and witnessing these hopping vampires is because typically they would string the bodies upright on a bamboo pole.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. And often, apparently, they would pull multiple together, and I quote, like shirts on a rack. Do you kind of get the idea? So like one pull like this, and then the other person holding the other end, and kind of like a clothesline type of thing. Or they would be strung upright and then like laid sideways to kind of carry them. And this was done at night. This was not done during the day, because who would want to see corpses being carried in the day through a town? And so they would carry them at night, and this would give the appearance typically of a hopping corpse. So it would kind of be bouncing along in the night. Either that, or they were carried on a person's back. So the corpse drivers would carry them on their back, and apparently they would carry them beneath like a large black robe. So they would hide the carrier, and all they would see is a bouncing silhouette of a corpse.
That's so bizarre. Right? Why would they hide the carrier?
That part I can't explain. I mean, I'm just assuming they had like a big cloak on because the weather elements, I'm guessing. Or I wasn't able to find any, but maybe there is a cultural significance to this whole process of being a corpse driver and giving respect to the dead. I can't say that for certain, but based off of my historical inference, I would say that could definitely be a component there.
Wow. Okay. So basically, people did literally see them kind of quote unquote hopping around. And so then you were talking about the reasons that they were going to do all of this and why the families would pay so handsomely to make this happen or go do it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so it kind of ties into our last episode is oftentimes if families could not pay to have a corpse driver carry the body back to the home, and especially if they couldn't get up that money in enough time, again, remember the Po begins to dissipate as the body decays. And so if they couldn't afford this, they would hire a necromancer or a geomancer. And if you remember from our witch episode, a necromancer is somebody that conjures the dead. So they either bring the dead back to life, they communicate with the dead, they're a medium of some sense, but mainly necromancy is referring to raising the dead. So you're like genuinely bringing them kind of back to life or bringing their soul back to life.
And then what's a geomancer?
So for my research, a geomancer is essentially kind of like a necromancer, but for the earth. So the name kind of fits. It's geomancy. But geomancy essentially is meant to like identify the earth negative energy fields and transform and balance the energy to a high place, a harmonious place. So there's positive alignment. So it's kind of like, think of a medium, but for the earth. So they're trying to balance the positive vibrations of everything. And this kind of comes into play with them being in their families being in different locations. And them hiring somebody that could balance the environmental kind of components of it. And again, sort of remove the soul, in a sense, from the body so it could hop back to the family. So that's this kind of second, maybe third at this point, context behind the whole idea of them being a hopping vampire. Their soul was able to hop back to the family so they could have a proper burial, even if they were not able to get the body there in time.
I guess it makes sense that souls wouldn't have legs, but like, do they have pogo sticks? Or like, it's if you were a soul, how would you get around? I personally feel like I was thinking about log rolls the other day. Like, I haven't done a log roll, like a proper, I'm talking like horizontal roll in a while.
Okay, wait, Kendall, so you would log roll? That would be your way.
I would log roll, but I might regret that decision. It's not like the cutest. I was just thinking about log rolling the other day, so I feel like it's top of mind.
I think I would probably, I don't know if you've seen this TikTok, Kendall, yet another one you may not know about. The whole like tortoise and the hare dance. If you know, you know. The whole like,
I have literally no idea what you're talking about. Once again,
the little bunny hop, along the stage. If you know, you know. I would do the bunny part. I don't think I have the core strength to do the tortoise portion of it. Again,
you're still hopping though. Interesting.
I'm still hopping. Oh, yes, I am. I guess. So all in all, a jiāngshī comes about from a lot of different reasons, but the main ideas are that the body is sitting around for quite a long period of time before the burial can take place. And in Taoist culture, in ancient Chinese culture, a burial wasn't just like putting the body into the ground. It was a whole official ceremony. And if, again, like we said, if that Po sits in the body for too long, that is when we get the jiāngshī. And especially because I mentioned we're in the Little Ice Age. And so bodies would often...
Was the Little Ice Age, because it wasn't just the whole world, right? Or was it
It was the whole world. Yeah, the Little Ice Age affected the whole world, but it affected everywhere slightly differently. So we know in England they saw cold temperatures, but mainly a lot of rain. We know in South America it actually helped them slightly because they were in a warming period previous. And so anywhere closer to the equator wasn't hit as hard. You can kind of do the math there, but we know China was very, 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 very cold. And so again, like we said, a lot of families, they would hire these corpse drivers, but just because they can hire a corpse driver, maybe spending all of their money on that, the burial ceremony was very expensive in itself. And so what this meant is a lot of the times families would, as bad as it sounds, have the bodies sitting around, not just in their living room, but they would have them in the home on the estate for a long period of time. And because of these freezing temperatures, they were able to do this without the body rapidly decaying. But again, if the Po sits in the body for too long after death, that is when we get the jiāngshī. So essentially, it's this whole idea. There are a bunch of different reasons for why the bodies wouldn't be buried fast enough, or this Po would sit in the body for a long period of time. And that is kind of our background and our origin behind their creation.
Based on everything you've read, do you think that they created the jiāngshī out of fear or hope? Like, was it something that they were scared about happening, or something that they were giving meaning to afterlife and in a hopeful way?
Honestly, Kendall, I feel like this will kind of be explained once we get into the whole like nature of the jiāngshī. I think it was out of fear. I wouldn't see this as a positive aspect. It wasn't a positive thing that happened. And again, they're very different than the idea of a Western vampire, where like they can still live their lives as normal humans, but they still need to feed on blood, and like they're still in society and nobody really knows. You know, that's not the case with them. Like, they don't get to still live a full life, a normal human life if they choose. So I honestly think this was out of fear, and maybe it was closure in a way for the families, to have some explanation, or, you know, some sort of like justification, I guess. Like, well, at least they're somewhere, you know, at least their soul went somewhere and it didn't just dissipate with the body.
Right. Because I guess if they didn't do a proper burial, the soul doesn't have that chance to be reincarnated. So it is like really just stuck in this limbo, because they're, you know, obviously in like Christian beliefs, there's the afterlife, and ghosts are like kind of stuck before that part. But then the goal, as I understand it, in like Buddhist and Taoist religions is reincarnation, like eventually just up and up and up. So it not being able to do that without a proper burial was quite feared, I'm assuming. So, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it explains a lot. And kind of like I've been saying this whole time, I'm like, they're very, very different than Western vampires. I really want to map out all of these similarities and these differences so you guys can like try to get a better picture of what they looked like, how they acted, and the really, in my opinion, truly interesting cultural aspects that go into the whole concept and narrative of the jiāngshī versus blah, 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 versus Dracula. Wait, before we get into these similarities and differences, Kendall, who was your favorite? Because you know Dad always had some vampire show on. Who was your favorite vampire, like in all of the shows, all the movies? Who was like, that's them right there? Who was it?
I feel like I'm very partial to tall, dark, and handsome energy, and I don't really go for pale. So I feel like any of the vampires that were pale, a la Edward Cullen, no, not for me. Yeah, I did not think Edward was hot in the sparkling, like, oh my God, so pick me behavior. So no, not him.
So you were Team Jacob? Bella, where the hell have you been, Loca?
I don't really remember the plot of Twilight, to be honest, but I would say Vampire Diaries was giving me a little bit more of like what I was liking visually, although they were kind of annoying too. And I feel like I don't remember which was which, but one of them was like too pretty boy for me. So I guess maybe the other one. Isn't Nosferatu about a vampire with a big dick?
I think so.
No comment.
Per my research, I can confirm.
I actually have no idea. I'm going to leave that in too at risk of looking so stupid because that could be the funniest, most reductive description of that movie's plot. You guys leave us comments. I feel like we're definitely forgetting like hot vampires. Please, like Spotify is the only platform that has comments, or like YouTube. So drop us like the hot vampires you're thinking of because I feel like I need some more inspo. Otherwise, Delaney, what's the like comparing and contrasting going on with these Western versus Eastern vampires?
Okay, so we know Western vampires love blood, okay? You know, blah, blah, blah. They love it. I'm Dracula. They love the blood. For the jiāngshī, however, they do drain a life force, but instead of it being blood, it's the qi, or that, again, one of those Taoist components of life. That's a life force. Now, they both are night-oriented, so both of them can't go in the daylight, can't go in the sunlight. So that's one similarity. Okay, so they both take a life force, different forms. They both can turn their victims. So like we were saying, whole Western, right? Western vampires give them blood, they die, they transform, or they like bite their victim. Same thing with the jiāngshī. So via a bite or a scratch. So if they like bite them, they scratch them, that's what turns the victims then into a vampire or jiāngshī. And so, again, this idea of like a scratch or a bite kind of alludes to it being a somewhat virus, which we'll go into in our next section and kind of dissect that whole idea a little bit for you guys.
Which one of them sparkle?
Oh, Edward. Edward. That's Western. That's Western. When I get into describing the jiāngshī,
I don't even know if that's Western. Is that literally just Twilight? Like, who came up with that?
It's genuinely just Twilight from what I've seen in my media research. Like, they're
You're
always
glowing.
painted as wait, your skin. He's like, oh, I can't get it out of my brain. Woo! Wow. I don't know why I was ever into him, to be honest. But now, in Western vampires, we've already kind of covered this, but we know that they like turn into vampires by either being turned by another vampire, or it's like a curse, they get bit, romantic ideals type of thing. Now, we've already kind of been over with the jiāngshī. It's a ritual failure. It is, again, a failure of burial, of ceremony, an improper burial, a delayed burial, all of the aspects of that. So we have some differing cultural factors in that, where in the West we see it being like cause and effect. Well, they're both cause and effect, but we see like, okay, you get bit by a vampire, that's how you become a vampire, or like they turn you, whereas the jiāngshī could come about organically in some sense. Like they didn't need another vampire to turn them. It came about, again, from this improper burial.
Right. It's interesting because we talk about this so much, and especially in the last episode, it's kind of so fear-based. Like one is being, and we don't have time for a deep dive on the Western vampire in this episode, but like that's clearly fear-based of a certain group or instance. This one's fear-based of failure or external circumstances preventing proper burial.
Yeah, 100%. So on that note also, I think our favorite part of the Western vampire is the fact that they are almost always portrayed as seductive, beautiful, sexy motherfucker. Like you can't resist them. And that's part of the fear, is like they draw you in, they lure you in, you trust them, you're attracted to them, and that's their
the hottest guy in the room right now is a vampire,
Damon Salvatore right there. I would die. 98%. I would be a victim 100%. And so I feel like that's like a major part of the Western vampire is the fact that they're so attractive and it's like a siren, like they draw you in type of thing.
In modern media, at least.
Yeah. And bad news, guys. The jiāngshī, they're not him, okay? They're not him. They are grotesque. They are putrid, okay? Their skin.
Wait, I've seen this on TikTok. The kids are calling it
chopped.
Yeah. They're chopped?
Guys, oh my God. Wait, no, they're chunk. They're chopped and they're unk. They're chunk.
Wait, unk is
6'7".
What's going on?
Oh God, I don't know. I'm turning into them. I don't know.
You are
trying to cling to my last grabs on youth and 6'7". Their skin color is always discolored. We have portrayals of them being green, gray, black, white, purple, skin color wise.
Take your pick.
Sometimes take your pick. You never know. Sometimes they're furry. We have some depictions of them being like, serious. Sometimes we have depictions of them being like covered in fur, head to toe.
Kind of hot.
A lot of these, right?
Just kidding.
Some of these, like, give me that mink coat. And like these kind of align with the whole, like, I guess, classic idea of like a monster. You know, like if they're like green and they're furry and they're scary, like they were really playing into this whole, again, like narrative of this being a monster. This isn't a hot, seductive Mian, okay? This is scary. And they have foul breath. I mean, guys, here's the reality of it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, okay? But the concept of a Western vampire and a Chinese vampire in this episode is very similar. They are both dead, okay? They're dead, physically dead, but their soul is still kind of keeping them alive in a sense. And, like, let's be real here. In what fucking world is a dead corpse gonna be hot, smell good, you know? Like, not look like they are quite literally rotting? Chinese culture seemingly has it a lot more realistically depicted than Western, which has it very idealistic. So yeah, for a lack of better terms, they are gross. They stink. They smell bad. They're scary. Hop around due to their stiffness of their bodies. So again, this is a corpse. They don't have blood. And okay, I do want to note quickly though that although Western media, especially in recent times, very much depicts the Western vampire as this hot, seductive, etc., beautiful figure, in the original European Slavic narrative of vampire, I almost said witches, of vampires, they did note that they weren't beautiful. Like they were bloated, they were gassy, and they really kind of like did align with the whole idea of this being a dead corpse. So this changes over time. And then when we get into modern media, like what would you rather watch? Would you rather watch a show or a movie with a gross, bloated, rotting corpse? Or would you rather see Michael B. Jordan or two of them? You know, like media's got to pay their bills. So there is some alignment in the like original folklore of both of these. But just so you know, when I'm referencing this gorgeous, beautiful vampire, I'm talking about the more modernized Western media vampire that I'm assuming all of you guys kind of think of when you think of them. But there were similarities originally in their origins. Now, one other difference, and this is a big difference that we do see in the folklore and in the modern depiction of a Western vampire, they have like superhuman speed. They can jump super high into trees. They can jump super high. They can fly, like they can turn into a bat kind of thing.
Super good at baseball specifically.
Super good at baseball. They're really fast. They've got all the abilities, right? The jiāngshī, however, again, more so aligns with a more realistic view of this being a corpse. And this is our, third reason for the whole idea of them being a hopping vampire. Because their bodies are so stiff, because their corpse has been laying around for such a long period of time, they are forced to hop. Like they're so stiff that they can't like really move. They hop. And you may think that's not intimidating. Like, okay, they're running to let me get your blood, you know, hopping towards you. No, we do have a quote that says, no matter how fast you run, they can hop faster.
Shit. I'm like, whoa.
Shit, chill.
If I saw that Michael Jackson emoji thing coming at me at like lightning speed hopping towards me, I'd be so scared. Yeah, exactly. That's like what I'm picturing.
Yeah, I mean, and like they did have like superhuman hopping speed. So it wasn't like they were slowly like hopping towards you. Like they were very fast and they were very scary, and not to take away from that. But that is where the whole concept of them being a hopping vampire, that's what, again, our third reason for that. And they did have, however, some more alignments. They had the enhanced hearing. So they have that like perked up hearing. They had razor sharp claws.
Interesting.
And I feel like that got diluted in media with the Western vampire. Like, I feel like we've seen it in some depictions, but then again, in the more hot, like, big media productions, we lose the whole idea of the claws.
Okay, wait. I actually thought that this was a really interesting part of the research when I was reading it over. So the claws is and the idea of like fangs is actually because when you're dead, your skin like kind of tightens and recedes. And so if you think about like your fingernails and your gums like receding, then like the nail and like the cartilage, which obviously like that stuff decays almost never, like teeth are always the remains, right? So that stuff lasts, and then the skin recedes, so then they appear longer.
Right? Like, isn't that so cool? I feel like it's like,
that might be one of my dinner party takeaways later.
Okay, write it down. Note it for later. I think, at least to me, this is the most disturbing part of their physical description. They're described to have a prehensile tongue. If you don't know what that means, essentially it's like a tongue capable of grasping. So it's really long and can grasp things. And in particular, in this case, they grasp the soul.
Wait a damn minute. Hold on.
You sound a hammer.
Wait a minute. I was going to take a break.
Wait a minute.
I was going to take a break, and then I heard about this damn tongue.
What that tongue do?
Yeah, are we saying that this is a bad thing?
Guys, it gives a whole new description to the whole idea of like sucking the soul out of. Ooh.
I sucked that chi out of that man. That is literally so disrespectful.
Oh, wow. I feel like this is a good time if we're going to bring this back to humanity. Like, did you guys know that woodpeckers, their tongue is as long as their entire body, and that it wraps around their skull in their head?
What?
Yeah, it
and
like
when you
recoils.
said humanity, bringing it back to humanity, what exactly did you mean there then? Talking about
like
herds.
Something more so something, what's the word? Something innocent.
Sorry for the little intrusion. I heard some things that I might just like. I might needed to know a little bit more about.
It's something tickled my fancy, yeah.
It tickled my fancy, and he tickled a few other things, yeah. Was that a good accent?
Get out. No.
Okay. I'm gonna go.
I suck your blood. I'm so kinky. Okay. Okay, on top of their whole like physical descriptions being different and their physical abilities being different, they also had different targets. So we know that like a Western vampire typically only targets humans. We have like some accounts of them also attacking animals, but that's more so like if they need blood and they don't have humans at their disposal. But the jiāngshī both like equally targeted animals and humans because they both have qi, that life force that they need. So nobody was safe. Shit, nobody was safe. They weren't one with the animals. They very much hunted them too. On top of that, they both had weaknesses. And I think this is my favorite part of their differences, to be honest. We know Western vampires, they can't have garlic. Silver is another one. Like, they can't touch silver or get near it. The sunlight, and that's for both of them. And like holy symbols, so like a cross, holy water. I know like Ravane in some things, aka Vampire Diaries, and a wooden stake, like wood. Okay, those are their main weaknesses across all of our Western descriptions. Now, for the jiāngshī, it's a little deeper, and in my opinion, a lot more interesting. I'm going to list off their big weaknesses. So these are either things that could kill them or weaken them or things that frightened them and they would like run off from. The blood of a black dog. I don't know if this is like a black lab, like a chocolate lab, black lab. I don't know. But apparently the blood of a black dog, girl, that got him. That got him. A peachwood sword. So yes, we have a similarity in the wood. However, peach, like specifically peach tree wood. And I did my little research on that. And it's because essentially The peach tree in Chinese culture symbolizes an idea of like peace, of unity. And so I guess that's like, you know, they were able to bring peace and unity by killing them with a peachwood sword in particular. They also really feared hen's egg, so a chicken egg, rice, like a bowl of rice. Essentially, like they couldn't, if like you put a bowl of rice in front of them, like they couldn't look at it. And that was somewhat like garlic kind of to them, because it reminded them that they couldn't eat. It reminded them that they weren't alive and they couldn't indulge in that bowl of rice. It was kind of like a mockery of them, and that really upset them.
Not to be too biased, but like after hearing all these different things that they were afraid of, if I had to pick one, I would also just still pick silver. I just feel like that would be like very convenient. Like maybe I'll just be allergic to silver. You know what I mean? Like, no, sorry, I'm a gold girl. Yeah, no, silver will kill me. Yeah, no, gold only for me. Thanks. Yeah.
I feel like you are a vampire.
Perhaps.
Okay, so Kendall would be a Western vampire. I think we have that noted. And another one of these like weaknesses that we have in the jiāngshī are, and I think this is so freaking interesting, they had this like compulsion where if somebody dropped coins, they had to stop and count the coins that fell.
They were OCD. These were OCD vampires.
They were OCD vampires. But it was something, again, this was like part of the curse. Like these were things that they couldn't escape. Mirrors and bells.
OCD is a curse, Delaney.
Oh, it's a curse. Mirrors and bells. Another thing. Freaked them out. Didn't fuck with them. Did not like them. This part I feel like is quite humiliating in my opinion. They could be physically pushed over because they were stiff.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like tipping cows.
Tipping cows. Yeah. So these were, again, some of these were like things that like frightened them, or that they would, again, kind of like the idea of garlic, that would scare them away. Other things were like like defense mechanisms against them. So like the peachwood sword, physically pushing them over, mirrors, bells, and also the enchanted paper talisman, the fu, it was called, on the forehead. Like you would put it on their forehead and that would immobilize them, and then you could like control them essentially. So they have a lot of aspects, and they have a lot more ways that you could stop them other than like a wooden stake to the heart, some garlic, and some holy water, you know?
So in the same way that we took the origins of vampires, which like you said was like actually quite similar, like fear-based, like unattractive explanations of things that people in that time period couldn't explain, and then the Western media took a hold of it, like both in stories that are, you know, think of like those early like Dracula stories and everything, and then now to Vampire Diaries. Do we see this belief system also becoming a caricature or like dramatized or mass marketed in media in China?
Yes. And that is kind of where we get at least a lot of the like physical descriptions and the narratives built about the jiāngshī are mainly through, we have a lot of movies coming out in the 1980s, so pretty recent in a historical timeline. A lot of poems, a lot of books. Pretty much everything was pushed out through media and less so historical records. Again, that's one of the joys of this October series, is I get to actually look into the, not in a sense, not saying less credible history, but it's not that like hard rock primary source cited information.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically folklore, which is kind of cool. I feel like we usually try to base everything we do in like hard facts, but the folklore is it. Look, everyone in these time periods thought this was true. It is only folklore now because we know it isn't true. But these things came about as explanations and justifications for very real life things. Like no one thought this was crazy at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is, again, kind of like the witches somewhat. I mean, witches lasted a lot longer, but yeah, it's like this whole idea that it was a real-time fear.
I feel like you can also kind of tell the westernization or like the mediaization of it all too, with like, if you think about a show about magic, like so many of them, there's witches and warlocks and werewolves and vampires, and they're all coexisting in this like magical little universe. But all of these things, as you can tell by the last 2 episodes, came up totally independently of each other for totally different reasons. And we only recently just kind of like grouped them together kind of simplistically to be like, these things don't exist. These things are magic, whatever. Let's just throw it in.
Yeah, good point, Kai. Like I never thought of that. That was a really good point.
The series has been interesting because we're talking about the roots of all of it, but it almost feels like there's 2 different iterations. Like there's the folklore, the traditional Chinese folklore, the traditional Slavic folklore of, quote, vampires, but like that is a totally different thing than like the media portrayal of vampires. I would say they like got their inspiration from it, but I would like they're barely telling the same story at this point.
Yeah, and so I mentioned earlier that I was going to kind of explain this whole idea of like certain things like the biting or scratching being a virus type of thing. And for this episode, we actually have kind of like realistic historical explanations or maybe like assumptions as to maybe like why people would see the body doing certain things and take that as they're becoming jiāngshī. Again, through this improper burial, late burial, many of the reasons we noted. So one of the first one is that desiccation tightens the skin. And like Kendall was kind of mentioning this. So when the skin shrinks on the body, it makes the teeth look larger and the nails look longer. And it gives this appearance that they've grown. So they'll like when they look back at the body, it looks like the nails have grown a lot, when in reality, it's just the skin around them kind of shrinking. Same with the teeth. The whole gas bloating, like they're so bloated. Again, this isn't like when we think of medical reasons, like the whole swollen belly thing, where they saw that as, oh, they've eaten, like they've just absorbed a lot of qi, life force, like they've been fed. We know in a more medical sense that that is a gas bloating when the body begins to decay. We know the stiffness of them, again, that they believed was due to the fact that they were and so then for the idea of the corpse being very stiff, okay, I think at least when I originally think of a corpse, I'm like, oh yeah, stiff, that makes sense. But then when you think of like an actual dead body, you kind of think of a limp body. But we know that there's rigor mortis, so like the body does go stiff in death for various reasons. And also, like we noted, Little Ice Age, a lot of them were preserving the bodies through freezing temperatures, so that would stiffen, kind of almost freeze the body. And a lot of the times they would do like somewhat of a light mummification process, again, trying to preserve the body so they could have this burial ceremony. And so they would kind of either dry the body out or do various different, again, minor mummifying processes so they could preserve it. And so then that equals stiffness. We also know, and I think I forgot to mention in their description, I got all caught up with all the other factors, that they typically had like red or yellow eyes. That's part of the way that they're described, both in Western media and in Chinese culture. Our more medical explanation for that is either red eyes, allergies. Crazy to think, but yes, that does still happen even in death. Irritants can happen. And jaundice. That it kind of explains the yellow eyes and yellow skin. So if somebody was jaundice, I mean, think of it, that would be really hard to explain back in an age when they didn't have as much medical knowledge, medical technology. Also, and this is talking maybe for living individuals that were suspected of being jiāngshī, if they had this like rabid aggression, I know in today's age, we think of rabies as only being something that like primarily hits animals, but humans can get rabies too. And in this era, we do see a lot of cases of rabies, which in that time,
I did not know that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, think about it, like if an animal has rabies and it bites you, you get rabies.
Oh, well, I usually just get the shot, but...
Right. Usually. How many times have you been bit by a rabid animal?
Oh, well, I actually had to get a rabies shot because, and a tetanus shot, because I actually smashed my thumb in the door walking out of Moynihan train station like 4 years ago in New York City. And I like passed out multiple times. My entire nail like came literally out, like whole like torture came whole fingernail, thumb out. And they were taking me to the hospital because the ambulance came and they were like, you need a tetanus shot and a rabies shot. And I was like, why do I need a rabies shot? And they were like, well, the rats. And I was like, oh, no, of course. Yeah. I mean, I guess I did like pass out bleeding on the grounds of New York City. So anyway.
So you've had your run-ins. You've had your run-ins with rabies. Wow. Another factor, again, this is like if in a living person that someone would be suspected of being a jiāngshī. Cold skin, that was another one. If they were really cold, we have people that are anemic. Kind of crazy to think. But there's a lot of explanations, essentially, to a lot of the physical descriptions that we get.
I actually wasn't even really thinking about the fact that if this was something that people feared, that they were also accusing people of it and that they were actually worried it existed among them.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you found about that kind of like fear, or like did it translate into any like hysteria, like how it did with witches?
We don't have records. We don't have proper records that do depict like a jiāngshī craze or hunts of them. We more so have just kind of the silenced fear almost. But we do know they had a lot of their preventative actions. Some of the ones I mentioned before. Push them over. We have the talisman, mirrors, peachwood items. But also they would have like coffin prevention. So what they would do, like once they did start to fear this more, they would stake the lid of their coffin shut. So they would nail it completely shut. A lot of times they would put red beans, iron, and rice in the coffin. These were all things that were, again, sort of like the Western vampire and garlic. These were all things that were kind of toxic that would weaken the jiāngshī. Either that, or if, let's say, again, this body has been sitting for quite some time and they are scared that even during burial that they've already become a jiāngshī, then they would cremate the body. This was allowed up until the 1600s, however, because after that it was banned for the filial respect for the dead. So all in all, we can kind of say, okay, there was this fear. We do know the origin of it, but there were probably some realistic explanations. So realistic to us in present day, that can explain a lot of the fear and a lot of the skepticism. But again, back then, they didn't have half of this information, half of the knowledge that we have. And so it does kind of, it explains it a little bit, but at the same time, it doesn't take away how fearful someone would have been for one of these jiāngshī to come up, or touching somebody and they're freezing cold. You're not going to think, oh, well, they're anemic. No, that's going to be like, why are they freezing? Okay, with all that said, Kendall, be real, okay? If you didn't know about these various physical conditions or ailments, viruses, etc., who in your life, you don't have to say the name, but who in your life, like, would you suspect would be a jiāngshī for any one of these different reasons?
Can I say myself? If the criteria is being cold all the time and also bloated, then yeah, point me to the nearest Qi, because I am jiāngshī. Hey, that's a bar.
That's a bar. It's a bar right there.
jiāngshī man, looking for the Qi man.
I'm a hopping a buffet. That was the ad lib.
Hop in the pussy and drain the Qi.
I'm talking about any. I'm a hop in that pussy.
Okay, let's wrap it up. Okay, so we've done a lot of like comparing and contrasting between Western and Eastern vampires, but did they ever blend? Like, did these two concepts come up independently, or were things like, I don't know, like the Silk Road or like trade or travel passages connecting these ideas and they were borrowing some of these concepts from each other?
Yeah, they were. And I think we get one of the coolest terms I've ever found in geographic history. There was something called the vampire belt. Like,
no way.
What? Yes, we have the vampire belt.
You guys, I'm going to put a map of this on socials so you can like go check it out because it's actually a real thing.
Guys, it is a very, very real thing. And this stems from like kind of around the Balkans, all the way into European Russia, Asian Russia, Mongolia, all the way, it passed China even. And I think this is so beyond interesting because it kind of, similar to witchcraft, explains how these narratives got shared and pushed, and why we see a lot of similarities in the narratives. Like we were saying, there were a lot of similar things. Some of their core principles, like sunlight, wood, blood or chi or a life force. A lot of those big similarities. And then their differences lie in their cultural aspects, like where they were in the world and the culture that they were a part of. Those are the main differences that we see. And so, yeah, okay, super cool alignment there with our vampire belt. How fun is that?
I want a vampire belt. I feel like that's such a perfect place to wrap the episode up because I honestly think that that's my dinner party takeaway. I think that the idea of a vampire belt being a very legitimate thing that, like I said, I'm going to post this on TikTok on TikTok and on Instagram because we actually have like a textbook map of it. The fact that exists is the coolest thing. And then I feel like I can get into like, oh my God, well, there's actually a vampire belt because there's this whole other category of these vampire type creatures that we've pretty much like never talk about.
Yeah. And with that, guys, thank you for listening to today's episode. Make sure that you stay tuned, you keep your notifications on, because this is not the end of our October series. Fret not. We have a bonus episode coming out on a mystery date. So follow the pod, turn on the notifications, and we will see you in 2 Tuesdays.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Spilled is produced with the help of our team, Rachel Stout, Jacob Regner, and Soraya Fofana.